And it is Friday, 7 o'clock. Happy New Year's. Happy New Year's Eve to everyone who is tuning in or watching on the replay. Let me pour myself something real quick. And I want to apologize for anyone who happened to have tuned in at 5 o'clock. I originally scheduled this for 5 o'clock p.m., my normal time, but something came up and I needed to move back a couple of hours. So for those who are tuning in, thank you very much at 7 o'clock. I also thought about doing sort of a, usher in the New Year's Day live stream, but I think I'd be a little bit tired and I don't want to throw out my sleep schedule because I would just feel like crud the next day. I just feel really inactive next day after I stay up too late. It happens when you get older. You just can't stay up. It basically feels like jet lag. And I hate the feeling of jet lag. It takes me a couple of days to get over jet lag. So, oops. I meant to have that hidden at the moment. Hopefully, you didn't see that. I couldn't tell what it was. That is my whiskey of the year, or my number one whiskey of the year. We're going to go through all of my top 10 whiskeys for 2021, but I need to sort of set this up. So, Debbie, the Dalmay, thank you much for tuning in. IC86, thanks for tuning in. So, this time of year, a lot of whiskey tubers like to do a lot of top 10 lists. Some will break it down to if they did a lot of bourbon, so they'll say their number one bourbon, their number one rye, their number one Scotch, their number one Irish. Break it down to different categories so that it's not just a top 10 list, it's a top of various categories. Some, of course, if they only do bourbons on the channel, they're just going to do their top bourbons. One channel, oddly, he had his top, I think it was, I can't remember if it was a top 5 or top 10 whiskeys for 2021. And I thought, okay, what's his full review? So I went to look for the full review of those whiskeys that he said he was top 5 for 2021. And I couldn't find any videos that he had actually reviewed them. So, you can do whatever you want on your channel, but I think most of us, what we're doing is this is at the end of the year. We're looking back on the year at all the whiskeys we've had over the year, and then looking, okay, what's been the best that we've had? Now, Wilhelm Byington, thank you very much for, or William, thanks for tuning in. Now, every year that I do this, even though I explain what it is I'm doing, I get all these negative comments because people don't seem to understand what I'm doing. I have one criteria. Oh, actually two. One, it has to be a whiskey that I reviewed in this year, okay? Not a whiskey I tasted at a whiskey event, not a whiskey I tasted at a friend's house, not a whiskey, I sampled, not a sample that somebody sent me. It has to be a whiskey that I reviewed. So that's the criteria. Number two is it has to have the wow factor. I don't pay any attention to the price. Let me take a little sip real quick. I don't pay any attention to the price. Price is not part of the criteria. Whether it costs $1 or $1 million, if it was within the top 10 of the whiskey that I reviewed in terms of I think is the quality, and giving it a score, then it makes the list. So, and also availability doesn't matter. Some people get upset, and I get these comments, hey, I can't find that and I can't afford it. What good is it if I can't find it or afford it? Welcome to planet Earth, right? In which you can't always get what you want, as Mick Jagger said. a lot of times there are whiskeys that I can't find, or seem too expensive, whatever. But these are whiskeys that I have reviewed during this year as part of my whiskey journey, and I think are the best of what I have reviewed and tasted this year and presented on this channel. So that's really it. It has to have the wow factor. So let me take a sip real quick. What I'm sipping on is my number one whiskey of the year. Absolutely fantastic. Whiskey with Molly. Thanks. He says 3 a.m. here in the UK, but it need to know that Erik whiskey of the year is. Okay. Sorry, it's going to take a little while before we get there. I will present a list. We'll present this entire list in the description box after the live stream, and I'll post it on my Facebook group as well. So my channel is a little different than a lot of other channels. Some channels focus on just Scotch or primarily Scotch, say Scotch test dummies, Scotch for dummies, or some focus just on bourbons. I do everything. Number two, and I don't know anybody who does it who does this the way I do it. I do long series, so I'm really interested in exploring a particular style of whiskey or a particular region, and I could spend a month, 2 months, or 3 months just buying every whiskey that I can get and trying it from that particular category. So I'm going to give you a summary of, I'm going to show a summary of everything that I've done for the year in terms of categories, and that'll let you know why the whiskeys that I'm doing are showing up. All right. Now, other whiskey channels, they sort of chase bottles, whatever's popular. What is the biggest thing? What's the audience really, looking for? And so they will try to get a hold of it so they can review it because that's going to attract more viewers. I don't do that. I do whiskeys that are part of my journey, that are part of my study, and you all watch because I'm doing something different. I'm going to reveal to you whiskeys that no one else has done, categories that no one else has done. I'm also going to go a little bit more in depth than a lot of other channels does, and that's just how my channel. It's not any better; it's just different than other channels. So other channels are perhaps more entertaining and so forth. Different channels do different things. So this is really about what did I explore for this year? Last year, perhaps I spent more time in Texas. Maybe the year before that, I spent more time with some other category. Maybe I spent more time doing Isla whiskeys or whatever. This year, actually, currently I'm doing a series on independent Isla peated whiskeys, and this will continue on through probably the end of January. So, and that's just how I approach things. Eventually, I will do a series on Canadian whiskey, and that I'll check that box off in my journey. Eventually, I will do a series on Japanese whiskey. Although one of the best channels in doing Japanese whiskey is Kampai Planet. And if you've ever seen him, he was recently just on Aquavite's live stream. Absolutely superb, not only in terms of his presentation, but the editing and everything else on this video. Just really does a great job. Yeah, it makes you almost intimidated. Wow, how can I measure up to what he's doing Japanese whiskey? But because it's not about trying to impress anyone or trying to what audience I'm going to gain, but my exploration and travel into whiskey. Eventually, I'll do a series on Irish whiskey. All right, we're taking a sip. Wow. Wow. This is mind-blowing whiskey. All right. Jack the Pickled Hound, thanks for tuning in. I think Ken by Planet, he does so Ken by Planet and First Fill Whiskey, my personal opinion, are two of the top editors and presenters in the whiskey tuber world. They just do a fantastic job. For the visual component and the way they do the editing. This year, if you were to go back and watch my previous year's videos, I spent more time and trying to improve my editing. If you notice, I am doing things at a different camera angle here, and I'm doing my lighting a little bit different. Lighting has been a really little challenge because in the house I moved into, so I'm doing lighting a little bit different. It's a constant experiment. If I really want to do it well, I would install lighting in the ceiling above me, like I had in my last house. But I'm not gonna be poking holes in the wall or on the ceiling. All right, enough of that. So let me show you first slide. So this is the total whiskeys I reviewed. So now I did more videos than this, but this is just in terms of individual whiskeys I reviewed. So I did two videos. One were top 10 wines that every whiskey lover should know. And I did another video called top 6 wines every whiskey lover should know. Bringing my sommelier background into it and helping people to understand the casks for the various types of wine casks and what types of wines they should get to know. So I didn't count that because those weren't whiskey reviews. They're just it's just a 2-part series on wine and whiskeys. All right. So I did 2 committee releases of Ardbeg, 16 Highland peated Scotch whiskeys. So that was a series. I did a whole series. This probably takes me about 3 months to get through all that. Highland peated Scotch whiskeys. That was one of the most, I would say, that was one of the most surprising for several reasons. One, I didn't really realize how many Highland peated whiskeys there are. And although when I was in Scotland and up in the Highlands, up in Speyside, when you visit a distillery, they have bottles that aren't into the general market, but you can buy there. And you will see a lot more distilleries make a peated whiskey than you realize, but they're not distributed. They're not in the wider market. They're just there for the local market because they're such a small production. All right. Independent Isla peated whiskeys, which I'm currently doing. I've done 5 of those thus far, and sherry and sherry cask whiskeys. So I was reviewing. You know what is missing? The Irish whiskeys, or was that last year? No, 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 no. I think I'm missing a statistic. Hold on. I think I'm missing a stat. Well, we'll find out. I have another overview. I think I'm missing a stat in this list. I think I'm missing the Irish whiskeys. 2, 16, 18, 23, 33. Yep. I forgot the Irish whiskeys. Son of a gun. Because I did a series on Irish whiskeys. Son of a gun. All right. I forgot how many Irish son of a gun. I goofed on that slide. So okay, we can do the math. Okay. 2 plus 16 is 18. 18 plus 5 is 23. Plus 11 is 34. 34, 45 minus 34 would be 45 minus 45 minus 34 be 11. So I did 11 Irish whiskeys. Someone correct me on my math. If you subtract all that from 45, that tells you I think I did 11 Irish whiskeys as well. Someone check me on my math. I goofed up on that one. Yeah, so Irish. So that was the second time I did a series on Irish whiskeys. I did one the previous year, and I did another one. I think I pretty much explored Ireland as much as I want to at this point. I've covered all the major distilleries. I've covered a lot of the smaller bottles. Right now, I had Jim Ingram on from Whiskey Novice, and I think we're both 11 is correct. Thank you very much. It's whiskey math. SC Crash 26. Thank you. Yeah, so I did 11 Irish whiskeys. So Ireland is sort of, I described as being sort of in a puberty stage. They've gotten out of childhood. They're growing. They haven't really come into full maturity. A lot of the casks, some of these smaller distilleries, some of them are sourcing whiskeys from the bigger distilleries, and they're waiting for their own cask to mature. Some of them, I think, are the distilleries themselves are still trying to get their act together. There was one particular Irish whiskey. I had a really bad bottle. Other people have had good bottles, and that was looking for it. Not that one. Not that one. Not that one. Dingle. Dingle needs more time. I was batch number 4, and it was no bueno. It was really, really bad. But the other people have had other bottles and really, really loved them. And I don't think we're tasting the same thing. I think they got a good bottle. I think they got a good batch, and I got a bad one. Quality control is an issue Dingle needs to work on. Teeling, of course. The teeling I had was actually one from their parent distillery. So they're waiting for a lot of their stuff to mature. I had a really nice teeling that was a PX cask, 14-year-old. The distillery is not 14 years old. So that came from Cooley Distillery, that they broke off from. Take another sip. Alrighty. So, now one of the challenges in making my list for top 10. A lot of the scores are the same. So there's like one that's a 90, a whole bunch of other 92. There's a few that are 94, and there's two whiskeys that are 95. So how then do you decide whether one's number 5 or number 6 if they both have the same score? Now, how do I decide? And particularly what the most challenging is, how did I decide on my number 1 whiskey since my number 1 and number 2 have the same score? Well, that's when I actually go back to the actual whiskey and not just look at the score, taste them again, and kind of go, okay, if I could only have one, which one am I going to go with? If I could only have one, which one am I going to go with? And that's how I then ranked them. So probably like number 3, 4, and 5, maybe even 6 and 7, all have like the same scores. Number 1 and 2 have the same score. Number 10 is the only one it's a 90. So it has to do with, I basically asked myself, if I could only have one, this one or this one, which would I take? If I could only have this one or this one, which one would I take? And that puts them in the numeric order, even though they have the same scores. Cohen, thanks very much for tuning in. Scott Rand said he loved the Black Pits. I grew into the Black Pits. That's a whiskey that needs time to open up. Number 1, when I actually re-reviewed that one during my second Irish series. I re-reviewed it, and I was much more impressed with it the second time around because it had opened up more, and the peated character was coming up more. It was actually providing a real nice framework. It had when I originally had it, it just had a little bit of a pepper character, and the Sauternes cask was dominant. That sweet Sauternes cask was dominant. But now with some age and time opening it up, the peat is becoming much more expressive. It's still fairly mild, but it's actually become a really, really nice whiskey. So that's my take on the Black Pits. Sauternes is a very, 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 very sweet, 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 sweet wine. Sauternes and Tokai are probably 2 of the sweetest wines. That's a real nice acidity, so they're not thick and gloopy. They're actually and some of the most expensive and prized wines as well. But Sauternes is so, 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 so sweet that the imagery of Black Pits doesn't really seem to match the profile of the whiskeys because the bigger emphasis is not on the peat, but on the Sauternes cask. So anyway, that's my take on Black Pits. Yeah, thank you for smash the like button if you would. I greatly appreciate it. I'll discuss it more when I get to number 1. This is my number 1 whiskey of the year. This is when a whiskey, beyond the point, it just grabs your attention, and it's almost like a distraction because you can't pay attention to anything else other than the whiskey. This is not a whiskey you're going to necessarily sit down and read a book or watch a movie. This is a whiskey that demands your attention. All right. So that's basically my approach to doing my top 10, how I laid out. And next year will be different because I will be exploring something different. This next year is going to be a little challenging. I have more academic studies I need to do. I'm going to be doing another series on Texas. I was going to wrap up this year with Texas. Decided to put it off because I was in the mood for peated whiskeys during these colder days. And so I put that off. So I'll be doing more Texas whiskeys probably starting in February. And I haven't really, not 100% sure where I'm going to go after that. I know I need to focus just on Scotland for about 2 years and do nothing but Scotland for 2 years. Depending on the COVID situation, I want to get back to Scotland. I would like to be in Scotland July 22 for my 3rd trip. When I first visited Scotland, I was actually the very first guest on Aquavita's channel. That was actually there in his studio. And he asked me, so is this a once in a lifetime trip or are you planning coming back? And I told him I was already planning my 2nd trip. Well, before my 2nd trip was over, I was already planning my 3rd trip. And now, travel permitting, I'm planning on going every year as long as I can, as long as I have the time, the energy, and so forth. Kahuna Glass, thanks for tuning in. Said check out Caledonian whiskey in Victoria. They do a nice selection. Thank you very much. In terms of Irish whiskey, I mean Canadian whiskeys. Thank you very much. All right. So we've been talking for 21 minutes, and I haven't mentioned a single damn whiskey. All right, you got to pay attention to the numbers here. Hopefully the imagery will work out well. I was just creating the slides before I started up, so hopefully this will work out all right. All right, so number 10, coming at number 10, the Glendronach Peated Highland Single Malt Scotch Whiskey, aged in bourbon, Oloroso, and Buddhahammon cask, bottled at 46% alcohol by volume, sells for about $100, and I gave it 90 points. So this is one I had heard about. A lot of other people really liked it. A lot of the Highland peated whiskeys are absolutely fantastic, but they're not transparent as to where the peat is coming from. From an academic standpoint, if they're using an island peat, say from Port Ellen, it doesn't do me from an academic standpoint to taste them so much, because I might as well just be having a whiskey from the island. When I got into studying wine and would travel around, if I was, say, at a winery, say in the Santa Cruz Mountains, and their estate wines are all from Santa Cruz Mountains, they say Pinot Noir, but they source Pinot Noirs from up and down California coast, I was only interested in tasting the wines that they produced that were from the Santa Cruz Mountains, because I wanted an association of that place with the wines. So even though a lot of the whiskeys are fantastic and a lot of great peated whiskeys are coming out of the Highlands and Speyside, from an academic standpoint, it kind of doesn't help me out a whole lot if they don't tell me where they're getting the peat from. And I would send them emails, and 99% of them never responded to I said, look, I'm reviewing this whiskey. Can you tell me where the peat comes from? And most of them they're just not open to telling you, or just not responsive. They don't even respond, period. Anyway. Now, as everyone knows, some changes are taking place at Glendronach in terms of chill filtering and coloring and all that. My recommendation is, if you can find one of these older bottles of Glendronach peated Highland single malt Scotch whiskey, $100 or less, I highly recommend it. In fact, I'll probably go all the way up to $120 if you can find one. These are going to be getting harder and harder to find. This is an absolutely delicious whiskey. The Oloroso and Buddhahammon play really well in this whiskey. The PX is going to give you some of those darker, dried black fruit notes. So PX and Oloroso, you can kind of tune in the intensity of your PX cask by balancing out with Oloroso cask, not to mention your bourbon cask. So you're not getting sort of overwhelmed with just the super dark black fruit notes. And then the peated just married really well, I think, with these sherry casks. I love a savory, salty, smoky, sherried, there's one other one, and sweet whiskey. Those are my 5 S's. If you can hit all 5 of those, then you're ringing my bell. And this has, I wouldn't say it's all that sweet. It does have some sweetness to it, but it's hitting and then the salty issue, probably not so much. And that's the issue, is probably if they're aging it in the Highlands but using Islay peat, you may not get as much of the oceanic influence, and so you may not get some of that more salty character. Old Pulteney up there, right along the coast, you definitely get some of that in some of their whiskeys. Talisker on the west coast, on Isle of Skye, you can get some of that as well. But there's some more inland distilleries that are doing some peated whiskeys, not so much. So if there's anything that's still being maintained in Highland distilleries, even if they're using Islay peat or some other island, is you're not getting, in terms of the aging process, you're not getting as much of that oceanic influence. But in a blind tasting test, a lot of these Highland peated whiskeys, I would think it was from an island. All right. Peter White, thank you very much, man. Thanks for tuning in. All right, next one. That was number 10. Coming in number 9. Tobermory 12-year-old Fino Cask Highland Single Malt Scotch Whiskey, aged in bourbon, Fino Sherry Cask, bottled at 55.1% alcohol by volume, $170. That's not cheap. I picked up 2 of them, 92 points. Now, when most people have a sherry cask, they're thinking what they're really experiencing is Oloroso. It's the number 1 sherry consumed. Fino doesn't have as much oxidative character to it. It's a lighter sherry, a little bit more nutty. You're going to get more apple and pear notes versus an Oloroso sherry. You're getting more dried black fruit notes, fig, dates, raisins. You're also getting more an oxidative character to it because it's an oxidative aging. And so you're going to get more of that nuttiness on the back end. So most people are not familiar with Fino Sherry Cask or Manzania. Manzania and Fino are basically the same thing. The only difference between Manzania and Fino is the region of Manzania is closer to the ocean. But other than that, in terms of the style of the sherry and the production and everything else, it's the same thing as a Fino. So the Fino and Manzania cask, you're getting marzipan versus you're getting maybe pear and peach and dried stone fruit notes, where you're going to get that nuttiness. You're going to get those almonds, and with a little sweetness, it comes across as marzipan. Which, if you ever had an almond croissant and they put a filling in it of marzipan, you get that almond paste, basically almond paste. That's what marzipan is. So this is an absolutely fantastic whiskey. $170. That's a killer there. By the way, so I will be the second week of January. I will be in Texas, down in Austin, Texas, taking another class there at the Wizard Academy, the next level up for the whiskey song class. I'll be teaching a class on sherry and sherry cask finished whiskeys. And so for the students who are there, after that, we'll have a sherry and sherry cask finished whiskey class, and you'll be able to taste some of these sherries. Looking forward to doing that again. I've taught that once before, and I'll be doing that again. But really unique whiskeys that are definitely worth checking out. In fact, my next, number 8, is very similar, and yet it's a lot less expensive. Number 8 is the Tamaton Manzania Highland Single Malt Scotch Whiskey. This is done in bourbon and Manzania cask, 46% alcohol by volume, sells for anywhere between $60 and $80, goes for 92. I give it 92 points. So the Tobermory, which is 12, which was 170, and the Tamaton Manzania, which goes for 60 to 80, you're talking maybe half the price. If you want to experience a Fino cask, and by the way, there is also a Tamaton Fino cask, and they're almost indistinguishable. I did a side-by-side comparison between the two, and they're practically indistinguishable between the Tamaton Manzania and the Tamaton Fino. So if you want a similar whiskey to the Tobermory 12 Fino, and you can find the Tamaton Manzania, highly recommend checking out. And for me personally, now, if I gave him the same score, what is it about the Tamaton that I prefer over the Tobermory? One single thing. And that is the mouthfeel, the texture. And that's a personal preference thing. To me, the Tamaton has a mouthfeel that reminds me of how Irish single pot still feels. or it's a little, it's sort of weighty, round mouthfeel, silky. I don't want to say smooth because people get put off by that. Silky, glossy. It just I like the mouthfeel of it, and that's really the reason. So in terms of a value price, if you're and wanting to experience a Fino sherry cask, check out the Tamaton Manzania or check out the Tamaton Fino cask. Now, these are part of the Quattro series. They did a series where they did special bottlings of the various types of sherry. But anyway, keep an eye out for these really, really nice whiskeys. I'm just checking out the comments here. Richard Agnew, how you doing, man? Checking in from Ontario. How you doing? Happy New Year, everyone. I'm sipping a wee Bow Blair 15-year-old. All right, hope you're enjoying that. All right, so I think they're not a real common type of sherry cask, but in terms of understanding sherry as a whole, in terms of the types of sherry there are, these are definitely worth checking out. A number of other distilleries have also done Fino casks, but they're not all equal. I have picked up a my brain just went blank. Lafroig. I had picked up a Lafroig Fino cask to use as a representation of a Fino sherry cask when I first time I taught the sherry cask down in Texas, and honestly, I was disappointed. I think the peat character did not play well with the Fino cask, and so the Fino cask really didn't display itself well. So if you see a Lafroig Fino cask, I'm not a big fan. I think Jeremy and Rob, Whiskey in the Six, Jeremy at Social Sipper Club, I think that and Rob have both tried the Lafroig Fino cask, and they weren't impressed with it either. I don't think the sherry and the peat worked well together. And so it's not a real good representation of Fino. And the sad thing is, if someone goes, I really like Lafroig, here's a Fino cask, I don't like that particular Lafroig, therefore I'm going to write off Fino as a category, thinking that that's how Fino's going to be like. And that would be really, really unfortunate. So, all right. Number 8. Let's go on to number 8. Number 8. Talisker Distillers Edition 2019 double aged in Amarosa cask 45 sorry, I just have allergies. I feel fine. My nose is a little stuffed. I think the heater running all day, you get kind of dried out because it's really cold, and then your throat gets dried out. All right. It drops down to like 35 degrees in the middle of the night. I got the heater on to keep the room warm, and it's a dry heat, and it just dries me out. Whatever. All right. This is a killer whiskey, and I think it's a little bit more readily available than a lot of other of the whiskeys that I have here on the list. Talisker Distillers Edition. This is the 2019 double aged in Amarosa cask, which is I'll explain this in a second. 45.8%, and the next whiskey is also 45.8, which is I'm telling you, it's another Talisker. About $100, and I gave it 92 points. So what is Amoroso? Amore in Italian means love. Amara means bitter. Amoroso means sweet, as opposed to Amara. What an Amoroso is, you take man, my brain just went blank. You take an Oloroso cask, take an Oloroso cask, take an Oloroso sherry, and then you add Pedro Jimenez to it, PX to it. So you're basically sweetening up an Oloroso, and then they call that Amoroso. So it's not, Amoroso is not a distinctive style of sherry in terms of how it's produced in a cask. It's because it's really just a blend of two other sherries of Oloroso and Pedro Jimenez, but they call it Amoroso. So you don't find a whole lot of Amoroso sherries out there, but they do exist. So this is a phenomenal whiskey. Strawberry preserves. So it's a little bit sweeter. I think this is, I don't know, I think this is an excellent whiskey for like Valentine's Day. It just seems to have that sort of feel to it. 100 bucks, if you can find it for 100 bucks or less, it's an absolute steal. This is a dangerous whiskey because you're just going to want to keep drinking. It's so tasty. You're just going to want to keep tasting it and tasting it and tasting it. It's really well balanced. It's a real nice development. It's not sweet upon sweet upon sweet, although up front it does have a lot of sweetness to it, but an absolutely delicious, delicious whiskey. I reviewed this one while doing my series on sherry and sherry cask finished whiskeys. Hey, Whiskey Mystery, how you doing there? Thanks for tuning in. If you're ever up in the, by the way, you did a tour of a shop here that I frequent. It's about 8 minutes from my office here in Santa Rosa. Bottle Barn, I think it's called. I think it's called Bottle Barn. Really interesting place. Anyway, so I watched your video on that. So if you're ever up here again, yeah. So whiskey for those that know, that's Phil and Deep. Anyway, Phil, I'm assuming it's Phil. If you're ever up here in the neighborhood again, let me know. I'd like to meet up. And yeah, Bottle Barn. And invite you over. And I'm not too far from there. I live a little bit more up in the hills, along the wine, out a little more out in the wine country. But I live in Santa Rosa. Anyway, so if you're ever in the neighborhood again, let me know. All right, so this is an absolutely superb whiskey, and we can always just catch lunch too. Even if you're just passing through and you want to catch lunch, we can always do that as well. I'm literally like 8 minutes from Bottle Barn. I head south on 101 on my way home, and then get off on College Avenue in Santa Rosa, and then head west into Santa Rosa, and head up in the hills off to the wine trail, and that's where I live. All right. All right, next. Hold on, I missed it. Did I miss one? Oh, okay, there we go. Ben Romich, 10-year-old peated Highland single malt Scotch whiskey. I think this one has changed its name. I don't know if they're still using the name Curiositas, but from what I've been told, it's still the same whiskey. So I think they dropped the name Curiositas, but the bent and the label looks different, but everything else is still the same. So if you don't find this one, look for the Ben Riach 10-year-old peated Highland single malt Scotch whiskey, aged in bourbon cask, virgin oak, and rum cask, which gives it a nice little sweetness to it. It really gives it a distinctive profile, make it really stand out from a lot of other Highland peated whiskeys. Bought it 46% alcohol by volume, $60. I think is a really good deal on it if you can find it, and 92 points. All righty. Next one up is another Talisker. The Talisker 18-year-old, number 5. And since my glass is empty, I'm going to grab another glass, and I'm going to grab that bottle, if I can remember where in the heck it is I put it. So I put my peated Highland whiskey over here. There we go. Up here in this corner. I'm going to pour myself a little bit of that one. Grab myself another little glass. So I put all my Highland peated in one corner. Then I put my glasses. So I can always reach over and grab another glass. And then, of course, all my other whiskeys are over there. All right. This is a whiskey, and it's a term and a phrase I don't use a whole lot about whiskeys. It's a phrase or term a description that I tend to use more about certain wines, particularly real high-end Pinot Noirs, and that is elegance and finesse. I'll explain that in a minute. Really, really love this one. I was actually, when I originally reviewed this, I was thinking this could end up being my number one for the year. I liked it that much. So ex bourbon, ex sherry cask, 45.8% alcohol by volume. The other Talisker was also 45.8. I'm going to sneeze here in a second. 170 bucks. That makes it painful. I give it 94 points. 94 points. This one, if you have a Talisker 10 and any of the younger ones, and you taste them side by side. So, for example, if you can find one of these are these little kits where they put, and these are nice because they're not real tiny minis. You know, it's a closer to, it's much more of a healthy sample, so you can get 2 or 3 glasses out of it, so you get a better experience rather than just one of those little tiny minis. But you can definitely sort of get a perception of the progression of what maturation does to a whiskey, because it's basically the same whiskey, just aged longer. So this kit has a 10-year-old. It has, oh yeah, this is the Amaroso. This is the Distillers edition. I actually didn't open this one since I already had that one open. And this is a bottle that's been discontinued. This is the 57 North. This is a freaking awesome whiskey. And sadly, they've discontinued it. Now, I could have put this in my top 10, the 57 North, but it's a discontinued whiskey, so I wasn't going to go there. But anyway, if you can find these little kits of Talisker, and these come out a lot of times around the holidays because producers think these make good gifts, good presents for whiskey lovers. Now, these special, sometimes they have a little glass or some sort of souvenir item to go with it, come in a special boxing, or these little sampler kits. So they tend to come out around the holidays. Of course, now they might all be gone. They're probably all gone. But when you start heading to the end of October, going into November, December, look for the special holiday sampler bottlings, because you can get some really, really cool stuff. Buy one for a gift for someone else, or for yourself, for yourself. I regret I could have bought more of those and then those kits, and I didn't do it. I just want to regret it already. So this very distinctive trait or characteristic of Talisker is the way in which the peat displays itself. It's not like a campfire necessarily or a barbecue. It comes across more of a spice trait, and it tends to sort of frame the flavors of the rest of the whiskey. So you still get, a lot of the fruit characteristics, but it's sort of framed in at least that's how I perceive it, in this sort of peppery, peaty character. A lot of vanilla, banana, citrus, a lot of lemon, lime, orange, vanilla, just a hint of, or just a waft of smoke. And there's this way that it feels glossy, the way it glides across your palate. It has a sufficient enough weight so it's going to stick around. It doesn't go, it's not like water, it doesn't feel thin. The peat character is very much delayed. It doesn't come in till till the end. So if you were to, let's say, count to 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the peat doesn't show up until you hit 9. So if you were to count, I can't count when I got whiskey in my mouth. It starts to show up right around 8, going 8, 9. The peat character starts to show up, and then it lingers. And yet it's graceful. It's not. Don't get me wrong. I love a big peated whiskey. I love Isla. But if there's someone, this is not a beginner's whiskey at 170 bucks, but it is a more graceful approach, a more delicate approach with more finesse and elegance. And that makes it really, really, I think, seductive. Um, it's got a little sweetness to it, but it's not super sweet. The Talisker, made with aged in Amarosa cask, is a lot more sweet than this one. But this is just, it's just so refined. And I get just kind of, I'm still now just get a slight waft of smoke that's absolutely delicious. Absolutely fantastic whiskey. Alrighty, let's go on to number 4. So 170 bucks. I know it's expensive. It's expensive. I have to be honest, I didn't pay 170. I paid about 80 bucks for this, but I got it through someone in the business. And that's not a norm for me. Only 3 times have I ever gotten a bottle from someone, a retailer, that I got at a huge discount. And I don't, it's not a quid pro quo. I don't do any advertising for him, anything like that. He just do me a favor. Eli, if you happen to be watching, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I hope to be back up there in the Sacramento area and visit you one of these days. All righty. Next, the Buddhahammon Manzania single malt Scotch whiskey. All right, I'm going to put this away. 11-year-old ex-Manzania cask, 50, it's hard to read the print, 52.3% alcohol by volume, 200 bucks. So I know people are like, oh man, I can't afford that, blah, 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 blah. The production is really low. Man, I can't even find it, blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. So what is distinctive about this one is some of the others, say like the Tamaton or the Tobermory, is the first aging it in bourbon and then finishing it maybe for a couple of years in Fino or Manzania cask. This is 11 years in Manzania. So it's 100% Manzania. So it is the best representation of a Manzania cask. And I bought 2 of these. It is the best representation of a Manzania cask that you can get in terms of how Manzania or Fino can really display itself in a whiskey. Again, the Tamaton and the Tobermory are absolutely fantastic, but this is even better. This just takes it one more notch at 94 points. But 200 bucks. So if you can get if you're looking for the experience, the Fino or Manzania experience, but without paying that much, oops, wrong one. This is the one you're looking for. If you want the more budget experience of an understanding a Fino cask, that's the one you're going for. If you want the full-on experience, the very best there is in a Manzania or Fino expression in a whiskey, there you go, with the Buddhahammon. But I love Buddhahammon. And I said this before. I think it was on another channel actually. Buddhahammon is like my second favorite distillery. Period. It's my favorite in the north on Isla. I could very easily switch teams and go from Ardbeg over to Buddhahammon. Very, very easily. I could switch teams. And by the way, shocker, I'll tell you straight, there are no Ardbegs in my top 10 this year. This year was the Scorch and the Ardbeg. They were good, but I didn't even give them 90 points. The Scorch was not a balanced whiskey. I like the 46 better than the committee release. It didn't have enough flavors. It was just smoke upon smoke and charred upon smoke. It does improve with a little bit of water. It does improve after 6 months. It does come around a little bit, but it's just too much. And I'm a peathead. So no Ardbeg even in my top 10, and yet here we go. We got at least one Buddhahammon, making my top 10. All right, next up, That was the, let's see, number 4. Number 3. So this is a whiskey that sort of goes under the radar. Um, Most people hadn't heard about it. I didn't get that many views of it. I think I had maybe like 400 views of this video because people hadn't heard of it. The Navajo's Palazzi Palo Cantado grain whiskey. This is from Spain, made from corn from the Penedès region in Spain, from a distillery owned by Jim Beam. It's a bottle at 53.5% alcohol by volume. Prices range 75 to 110, and I gave it 94 points. Now, the challenge is, so you could go online, go Google, look up this bottle. Some of the stores that had it don't sell outside their area, which made it really challenging to get. So I actually bought the first time I bought one, I wanted 2 of them. They would only sell me 1. There's only about 300 bottles released each year. So there's only 300 bottles a year. I wanted 2. They would only sell me 1. I took that bottle with me down to Texas. It's sitting in Daniel Whitting's office, and we'll taste it again in the next class. This time around, I bought 2 of them. I was able to get 2 of them. I probably paid under $100, under $100 for it. This is an absolute superb whiskey. Now, it's a grain whiskey made from corn, but what is that corn whiskey spirit really allows the Palo Cantado cask to really shine and display itself. It makes a really good canvas for the Palo Cantado. So when I try sherry cask whiskeys, I don't want the whiskey to taste like someone just took sherry and poured it into a whiskey, because otherwise you might just buy a whiskey, buy a bottle of sherry, and pour it into it. I don't want it to be like that. But I also don't want, say, peat or anything else in the sherry to so overwhelm the sherry cask that you're not getting a good representation of that type of sherry, which is what happened with the Buddhahammon Fino cask, which is why, and I wasn't the only one. Not Buddhahammon, Lefroy. Sorry, Lefroy Fino cask. Why I didn't like the Lefroy Fino cask is because the peat character, I think, was screwing up the Fino cask characteristics. So this is an absolutely spectacular whiskey. I've got 2 of these here, and probably the second week of, I'll probably bring another one with me just in case, down to Texas in case we need one, and we'll wrap up the class by tasting the Palo Cantado grain whiskey. Again, it's a Spanish grain whiskey, a little challenging to find, but if you can get one, especially if you get it for under $100, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. You will not be disappointed. But the thing is, when people think of whiskeys, Spain doesn't come to mind. Look at the label. The label is not an exciting label. How many people who are into whiskeys even know what the heck Palo Cantado is? They don't know what that is. A whiskey from Spain? Palo Cantado? What the hell is that? A grain whiskey? Why in the hell would I want that? And so this sort of flies under the radar, but it is an absolutely superb whiskey. So Jack the Pickledown, by the way, it's not a Scotch because it's not from Scotland. It's from Spain, but it is absolutely a great whiskey. All righty. So that's number 3. Now I would say, because this is peated, I'm tempted to grab that bottle and taste it, but because this is peated, the peat and the pepper and spice character on this, which is absolutely superb, would sort of clash with the Palo Cantado in that cask. All right. Whiskey Chris, thanks for tuning in. He says, big Buddhahammon fan myself as well. I recently got a cask strength signatory bottling of Stoisha heavily peated Buddhahammon. That is amazing. Cool. All right. So, number 2 and number 1. So, number 2 and number 1 are both at the same score. They both got 95 points. Um, the only reason why the number 1 is the number 1 is because, as I said before, because if I could only have one, it would be the one I would take. This next whiskey came out of my series, my second series that I did on Irish whiskey. It's the only Irish whiskey in my top 10, and that is the Blue Spot Single Pot Still Irish Whiskey. It's a 7-year-old, which is mind blowing that it's that young because it doesn't taste that young. When you think of a real young whiskey, under 8 years, typically you have these green notes and these youth sort of spirity notes and all that kind of character. Nope. This is done really, really, really well. It's a 7-year-old bourbon and Madeira Cask. The Madeira Cask, another fortified wine from the island off the coast of Portugal, plays really, really, really well with this. Bottled at 58.7% alcohol by volume, which I think really helps deliver the flavor on this. And it's expensive, $250. Now, when it was first released, it was a lot cheaper than this, but I think the word got out on this and people started grabbing them like crazy. $250, but I've seen them go for as high as $500. I would not spend $500. Even $250 is a bit steep. If you're just looking for a really good whiskey, I probably wouldn't spend $250 for it. I'm kind of, because of the way things are going in the whiskey industry, I'm sort of thinking about, I might just make a dedication. I'm not going to buy anything over $100 and do that for a year. What whiskeys can I, for a whole year, can do nothing but under $100 whiskeys. Not that I can't afford more than that, I can, but just to make a point. To make a point of an entire year of not spending more than $100 on a bottle to get the best quality price ratio whiskeys for under $100, just to show that it can, and as a matter of resistance to the increasing insanity of the market. But if you've had this, it is an absolutely superb whiskey. It is the best Irish whiskey. I like it more than your Redbreast 12, your Redbreast cask strength, or anything like that. To me, this is the best single pot Irish whiskey out there. Absolutely superb. All righty. So we're coming into like the last couple of minutes here on the live stream. Richard Agnew says, you have a good reserve behind you at any rate. Yes, I do. But see, the reason why I buy an extra bottle, I'm not a flipper. I won't flip of whiskeys. It's so that if I get an opportunity to teach a class or something like that, I have a representation of that particular type of cask, so I can go teach on it. All right. Excuse me. A little stuffed up as well. All right. So my number 1 whiskey of my top 10 and my whiskey of the year is, and actually I was drinking this at Christmas time as well, is the Buddhahammon, another Buddhahammon on my top 10, the Buddhahammon Paula Islay single malt Scotch whiskey, 11 years in bourbon cask, and then 2 years in a Paula cask, 54.9% alcohol by volume, $450 to $500, which is nutso. That is nutso. I know. An insane price. And I gave it 95 points. And I've been sipping it while I was sipping it earlier this evening. I was really enjoying it. So my Christmas time, I bought 2 of these. This one's down to about here. The second one I will probably be bringing with me down to Texas. We'll see how I tend to want to overdo it with whiskeys and when teaching a class. So, but the second one I might bring with me down to Texas because it is Paula Cantata is a rare sherry. Only about 2% of sherries end up becoming Paula Cantata. And so sherry casks, Paula Cantata sherry casks, are even more rare. So an absolutely superb whiskey. Would I recommend spending that kind of money on it? Only if if I wasn't studying sherry cask whiskeys and wanted to have a really good understanding of the different types of sherries and how they impact a whiskey, I wouldn't have bought it. I only bought it because I really wanted the best of the best of the best of the Paula Cantata representation. And obviously, I'm a big Buddhahammon fan. So that is my whiskey of the year. A whiskey that most people, I'm sorry, won't be able to afford. And even if you can't afford it, you won't be able to find it. When I bought this, there were only 2 in the state of California, and I got them both. And I'm not a flipper. I'm not selling anything. I'm not flipping anything. The other one we'll bring to share. But this is an absolutely superb whiskey. I would be the only whiskey I could think of that I have liked more was a Buddhahammon, another Buddhahammon, and that was the Moine Oloroso official edition. I picked it up in 2018. The Moine Oloroso, Buddhahammon Moine Oloroso official edition. Probably the best whiskey I've ever had. Absolutely superb. I would like to get my hands on another Buddhahammon Moine, even if it's not an Oloroso. But that was the best whiskey to date that I've ever had. This is a very close second. This is absolutely superb. And I bought that bottle at the distillery, not knowing really how good it was. If I had known about it, I would have brought home 2 of them. Peter White says, I have the Deanston 1997 Paula Cantata. Excellent stuff. Yeah. See, anytime I run into a whiskey that has Paula Cantata on it, I'm probably just going to grab it. By the way, if you haven't seen my series on sherry and sherry cask finished whiskeys, definitely want to check it out if you want to learn something about sherry and sherry cask finished whiskeys. And I actually have a whole bunch of sherries sitting I have a shelf facing this way, and all my sherries are down in there. All right. It says the Deanston is $300 cheaper, but it's probably just as rare and just as difficult to find. I know, because I searched like crazy looking for a more affordable Paula Cantata representatives. All right. So let me give you, I'm going to give you sort of an overview of everything for the year. All right. So, there we go. So 11 Irish whiskeys. So I was right. So for the year, I did 11 Irish whiskeys, 2 Ardbeg committee releases, 16 Highland peated Scotch whiskeys. That was part of a series. 5 independent Islay peated Scotch whiskeys, and that's a series that's still ongoing. And 11 sherry and sherry cask finished whiskeys. So if you're watching this and you want the full list, you can take a desktop picture right here. Just take a snapshot of that, and you've got everything that I just covered. I will also put this entire list in the description box later on. I will also post this on my Facebook group. But right now, if you want it, there you go. Exit full screen. All right. And now, how do I get that off the damn screen? Da-da-da-do. Da-da-da-do. Sorry. Nope. Give me a second. Oh, there we go. Hide. There we go. All righty. So there you had an opportunity to, Moine or Moina. There you go. Whiskey mystery. So Phil asked, still have Moine Oloroso in blind bottles here. Nice. All righty. So, hey, we have a little less than 4 hours left until the new year. I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay awake that long. I might not. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to look around. If I am up at midnight, I'm going to look around, see if any other whiskey tubers are live at that time. Of course, everybody has, New Year's Eve at different times. But I hope you had an absolutely fantastic Christmas. I've been off work this whole week. Really, really enjoying it. I've needed the rest. It's going to be difficult to go to work on Monday. I started another channel. If you were into Star Trek, I started another channel called Whiskey Trek, and I posted actually a video on there earlier today. Um, and it's gonna be fun humor. I will get into sort of the philosophical concepts that Star Trek addresses. But look, it's just another way to be geeky and nerdy, but it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm actually looking because this channel is probably a little more serious. That channel is going to probably be a little bit more fun and a way to combine two of my obsessions. I'm a bit of a trekker, but I've been watching some of the other Star Trek channels, and when they do a live stream, they're drinking whiskey and they're drinking really nasty stuff. Now you can drink whatever you want, no judgment, but they're drinking shitty whiskey. They're drinking like a Fireball and that kind of garbage. They're drinking the cheap stuff that comes in a can that's mixed with soda pop. They don't know any better. So I'm hoping to sort of introduce better whiskeys to Star Trek people and maybe people who aren't into Star Trek but into whiskey, maybe they'll get introduced, take an interest in Star Trek. But I basically there already are a lot of trekkies in the whiskey world, a lot of fellow whiskey tubers. So I'm looking forward to having that. I'm gonna do things like are you smarter than a Starfleet cadet? It'll be a quiz show, but around Star Trek. The live streams, I'm gonna call them 10 forward, which is where all the drinks are served on the front of the Enterprise D. So it'll be really, really good. I'll get a couple more videos up before I do a live stream, and then I'll start doing live streams on there. But it's going to be a lot of fun. So anyway, all right, Jeff Mo, thanks for tuning in. Paula, thank you very much. All righty. So again, hope everyone has a happy and safe New Year's. The majority of the people on the road after now even are going to be drunk drivers. My recommendation is stay home. Don't go out there on the road because from experience, just a lot of drunk driving. I probably 2/3 of the people out on the road late at night, New Year's Eve, going to New Year's, are going to be drunk. A lot of drunk drivers out there. So just stay off the road, particularly when it's raining. These jackasses don't know how to drive anyway. So, alrighty. Again, I'll continue on with the series on independent Isla whiskeys, and see you back here next week on Friday. And again, Happy New Year's and Slanjiva.